What's going on, guys, in the works, and welcome to another Battlefield 3 Showdown. Today we're doing two assault weapons that you guys chose in the fan poll last week, the AUG versus the AEK-971. Now these two weapons aren't usually thought of in the same category, but I think there's enough characteristics that are similar that might make this a pretty interesting showdown. But I bet you never expected to see these two weapons face off, but I did poll you guys last week saying the top weapons from each class would be the next showdowns for the next 4 weeks. And for the assault kit, the AEK-971 and the AUG were the top two voted weapons. Now, at first I was really kind of like, oh man, this is going to be tough because I don't know if I can find enough similar characteristics to kind of compare and contrast these two. Then I started thinking about it, and they are kind of similar in some respects. I mean, yeah, the AUG is kind of the antithesis to the AEK. You know, the AEK shoots fast, has high recoil, it kind of jumps all over the place. But then on the flip side, you've got the AUG, which is a little bit slower. You know, it's a little bit more accurate. But let's look at the stats here and kind of compare them. You can see the AEK shoots 900 rounds per minute. It has a high recoil. The reload, nah, it's not really that fast. Kind of similar to the AUG's reload, but the recoil on the AUG is much more moderate, but it does shoot 200 rounds per minute slower. So looking at that, you're like, okay, there's not a lot of similarities there. But if you think about it, in most situations, the AUG excels in a close quarters environment. Even though it is a low fire rate weapon, the fact that it is a bullpup means that it has really good hip fire. And I've found that the AUG always works well in a combination of short to medium range. And that's always been awesome to me. Like, I've always found the AUG to be very, very versatile. Whereas the AEK, it can be good at long range. It can reach out a little bit further, but it does take a very accurate shot. And I think that's where the AUG kind of excels over it. Now, if you really think about it, the fact that this is a bullpup weapon, the fact that it came in the close quarters DLC, makes you think, well, you know, the slow fire rate on the AUG isn't very attractive to take it into a close quarters scenario, even though you do get a hip fire bonus. But you know, I think there's two different styles at play here. You've got a lot of people who I know that I play with who like low fire rate weapons in close quarters because it allows you to get more shots on target. The AEK is kind of more of a spray weapon. If you look at the aim down sight accuracies on the AEK versus the AUG, you'll see that the AUG does have an advantage in that department. Most assault rifles are 0.2, and then you've got the FAMAS, which is 0.4. So it seems like those higher fire rate assault rifles kind of get penalized when aiming down sight, and that's one of the disadvantages to it. Whereas the AUG, it's a little bit more controllable, it's a little bit easier to tame in close quarters, so more of your bullets are hitting the target. They do have the same first shot multiplier though at 3, which is pretty high for an assault rifle. I think the AEK and the AUG are actually in the higher echelon in terms of first shot multiplier. But the one cool thing about this, which, you know, it makes it a little bit more versatile on the AUG's part, is that it does have the fastest bullet velocity out of any of the assault rifles at 670 meters per second. Now that's not going to help you much in a close quarters scenario, because in close quarters bullet velocity is not really a big factor. But when you're looking at taking the AUG in an environment where you're going to be in close quarters, but there's also the possibility of longer range shots, it's going to mean that your bullets are going to get there faster, which is going to be easier to hit moving targets. You don't have to compensate as much for bullet drop, and it makes it a little bit more versatile in my eyes. Whereas the AEK, I think in most scenarios, a lot of really good players are going to pick the AEK just because they are so good with controlling their shots. But there's a lot of people that I play with who like the lower fire rate weapons, and I think this actually is a pretty interesting showdown because you have two different weapons here, but they both have that ability to go in the close quarters. And I think a lot of people underestimate the AUG in close quarters. You know, they look at the fire rate, and a lot of people just like the fast fire rate weapons, and that's usually what they use to judge a weapon. I mean, if you look at the M16, that's why so many people used it, was it had a good fire rate. You know, really low recoil. Was with the AUG, it has controllable recoil, but it has that bullpup bonus. So if you're putting a laser sight on this, taking it into close quarters, you're going to have a really good time, because even though it does have a slow fire rate, your bullets are going to be hitting on target, and it's really, really easy to adjust to that. Considering that you can take it out of the close quarters. Let's say you run into a building on Firestorm, close quarters, you run out of the building like you saw earlier in some of my clips, you're instantly with a weapon that can reach out to those further ranges. Whereas with the AEK, I find it a little bit more limiting I know a lot of pros are probably going to say AEK or die, just because, you know, AEK is probably one of the best assault rifles in the game, but I think they do both have their strengths and weaknesses. So let me know what you guys think, because I think this will be a pretty interesting result, because a lot of people do swear by the AEK, you know, the SCAR L, those low fire rate weapons in close quarter scenarios. But I think if you're looking at this from a more objective standpoint, you're looking at it from the standpoint is, okay, which is the best all-around weapon? I think I'm going to have to give my edge to the AUG, even though I am a big AEK guy. I think the AUG fits my playstyle just a little bit better. So vote in the Facebook poll. Let me know what you guys think. Next week we will be doing an engineer weapon. I'm going to link that poll as well. It's pretty close right now. Looks like the ACR will definitely be in that poll, but if you want to change the results, you'll have the ability to pick next week's weapon as well. And if you missed any of our past showdowns, now's an opportunity to catch up, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.